Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Swamiji started off today's class with a poem that I'm going to paraphrase. The poem goes like, many times I held onto your lapel. It's like a palla. I don't know how to translate it into English, but let's just say the end side of the garment. Many times I held onto your lapel, but when I opened my eyes, it was my own garment. So the Bhagat, the devotee, is saying, many times I held onto your lapel, God, but when I opened my eyes, I realized it was my own garment. The one that I was looking for was me this entire time. When I didn't know about you, I had no hopes or desires. But now that I know of you, I can't live without you. You are my desire, my hope, my everything. That was the poem that we started the class with. Now going on to continuing Sidh Gosht. After the Updesh Guru Nanak Dev Ji gave to the yogis are very impressed and they realize that this person is quite exalted. They've reached a really high state and perhaps the highest state. So what they're saying now is, why don't you join our panth and we'll actually make you one of the highest gurus of the highest sects, and that'll make our pathway even stronger. And so they say to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Darsan pe ek karo ho jogindra mundra choli khintha. They say, look, become a yogi like us. Out of all of the darshan peks, start to look like us, and we'll make you the guru of the highest sect. Wear earrings, have a begging bag, like a choli, and also wear like a blanket or a shawl that you keep with you, which we call kinta, or you call it godavi as well. And then there's a sect of yoga called Darshani yogis, and the way you know that someone is a Darshani yogi is they wear earrings. And then they say Baraha antar ek sarevaho khat darshan pantha. But out of the yog sect, there are 12 different denominations even within that, and the highest denomination is called the I Panth. And so they're saying that we'll make you the guru of this, the I Panth, the most exalted one. In bid man samjhaiye purkha bahud chot na khaiye. That instruct your mind this way. Hey, they're saying to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and this will be, you'll never have to worry about death or anything like that, or having to go through anything bad. Nanak bola gurmukh budh hai jog jugat ev paiye. And so this is what Guru Nanak Dev Ji is reciting to Guru Angad Dev Ji and any of the other Sikhs that are sitting when they're telling them about, these are the conversations I used to have with the yogis, and this is what they told me, that to join their yogic pathway, do all of this stuff. And so now Guru Nanak Dev Ji is going to tell them, this is how I responded. Antar sabd nirantar mudra, how main mamta dur kari. Guru Nanak Dev Ji responded by saying, Antar sabd nirantar, with continuous contemplation of Brahm, I was able to eradicate mamta and home. And these are the two earrings that I wear. Ego's opposite is humility. That's one of my earrings. And mamata, which is attachment, its opposite is samata. Samata means to look upon everybody as equal. This is my other earring. So the two things is I dissolved my ego, my ahangata, and I've replaced it with humility. And my mamata basically means mine. So the first one is ego, ahangata, me. Mamata means mine. This thing is mine. This particular building is mine. These three particular children are mine. This particular relative is mine. This particular, whatever it is that you call mine, that's mamata. And I replaced that with samata, which means to look upon everybody as equal. And so these are the two earrings that I wear. Swamiji here mentioned that when it comes to ego, if you dissolve your khudi, you become Khuda. If you dissolve your ego, and you replace it with humility and humbleness, you can become that all-pervasive God. An egotistical person, I know everybody says surrender to God, but God is something that is very subtle. We have a difficult time surrendering to things that are even less subtle than God. For example, people say you shouldn't bow to another human being. If you can't even bow to another human being, how are you going to bow to God? I mean, that's a further step. And if you can't recognize that you're saying God is in everyone, God is everywhere, then if you can't even bow down to something that's relatively easier to bow down to, then how are you going to make the step up to bowing down to God? Right? God means that you're going to bow down to absolutely everything, and you can't even bow down to a human being. So an egotistical person it doesn't have the ability to surrender. They may say it in their head. If you've noticed, it's really, really easy to surrender to something that you imagine, right? Guru Nanak Dev Ji is not in front of you right now, so you imagine them. So easy to surrender. But if Guru Nanak Dev Ji was here, they would look like a human being. And how many people actually surrender to them? Very few. So this idea, this very conceptual idea that I'll be able to do a surrender, but when it comes to, when you come out of the mind and out of the concept, and then you actually have to do it in reality, it's a different game altogether. And then, for example, the Sakhi comes of Guru Ram Das Ji, who had a very long beard, and they were sitting on their throne, and Baba Shri Chand Ji, who's Guru Nanak Dev Ji's son, came to meet them. And Guru Ram Das Ji had so much humility that they got off their throne, went to see Baba Shri Chand Ji, and Baba Shri Chand Ji asked Guru Ram Das Ji, why have you grown your beard so long? And instead of a response like, oh, why do you care, or anything like that, they said, oh, I grew this beard to wipe the feet of Mahapurush like you. You're Guru Nanak Dev Ji's son. You're an exalted yogi, that it's wiping the feet of people like you, of Mahapurush like you. That's why I've grown my beard. So in their response, you can see how humble and meek they are. And remember, they're the guru, and they're bowing down to Baba Shri Chand Ji, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's son, and wiping their feet with their beard. Look how much humility that is. Krishna, there's so many Sakhis in history where God, or the representative, and the Sadguru representative of God, has not gone to meet on the egotistical people. Krishna didn't go to meet Duryodhan, instead went to meet Vidar and Vidar. Guru Nanak Dev Ji didn't go to meet Malik Pago, they went instead to Pai Lalo's place, right? So these are some examples of we should dissolve ego and take on humility. Then dissolving mamata, or moh. Moh is considered a sweet poison. Kam, krodh, lobh, and hankar, we naturally feel, okay, these are poisonous, they're bad, we can feel it in our system. But moh, it feels very sweet in the system. For example, you have moh towards your children. Feels very like, this is right, I'm supposed to be doing this. So it's a sweet type of poison. For example, Dhritarashtra, so basically in the Mahabharata, I know a lot of you may not be familiar with the history. Dhritarashtra was the big son, Pandu was the younger son. But Dhritarashtra was blind, so he wasn't allowed to be king. Okay? Dhritarashtra had a son named Duryodhan. Pandu had 5 sons, or just say that for now, that were named the Pandavas. Pandu, Pandavas. Dhritarashtra, Duryodhan. Dhritarashtra was older, but he was blind. So according to their rules, a blind person could not be king. Pandu was king. But what happened was Pandu, for some reason, he wanted to become a sannyasi and he retired to the mountains. And so the option was that naturally the next the next king would be the oldest son of the Pandavas, right? Which was Yudhishthir. But the Pandavas, they were humble in their character and their nature. that they decided, you know what? We'll let Dhritarashtra become the king for the remaining part of his life, right? And so they said, Dhritarashtra, we're going to make you king and we're going to serve you. It's going to be fine. But Dhritarashtra, knowing that, you know, I have to return my kingdomship back to the 5 sons, instead, because he was so attached to his own son, he ended up taking away the right of the Pandus, and he gave the kingdomship onto his son, Duryodhan. And he knew that Duryodhan was not capable of being a king because Duryodhan's intent was very malicious. He was very evil. He was the type of person that just wanted power and fame, but didn't really care about anybody else. Whereas the Pandus, the way that they, you know, set up the kingdomship, they're very caring. They care about the people that are under their kingdom and things like that. But still, he did that because of Mo. And they say, Dhritarashtra, you learn from all of your gurus. You're such a dharmatma, and this, that, and this. But when it comes to Mo, you just completely collapsed. Your dharam collapsed. Now compare this to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who all 4 of their sons, 2 of them bricked alive, 5 and 7-year-old. And then 2 of them, they personally sent out to battle and saw them dying on the battlefield or leaving their bodies. But even then, what do they say? In putrane ke sees par var diye sutachar, char muhe to kya hua, jeevat kai hajar. They're saying only 4 of my sons die. Many thousands of them still are alive. And so they have love for their sons, but they don't have attachment towards them. So the sadhana that we should be doing to break our attachment, to break our moh towards people. For example, let's say you're feeling attracted to a woman or a man. There's a meditation, Swamiji calls it surgery meditation. Basically, if someone is attracting you or something's attracting you, start to dissect it and see what's actually under there. And for example, I spent 2 years, 4 hours in a lab every week dissecting human cadavers. So I have firsthand experience of what actually is inside Black people's bodies, white people's bodies, Asian people's bodies, female bodies, male bodies, a lot problematic bodies, healthy bodies. I've dissected them all, and right from the skin all the way down to the bone. And what's inside? First of all, it sucks because it's all colored the same. You can't even tell things apart. That was never mind. We won't get into it. What's on skin? Fat, pus, blood, coagulated oils. They're starting to separate out. Fecal matter. There's formaldehyde and stuff in there. It's not pretty underneath there. It's really not that pretty. And when you start to dissect, once you're being attracted to something, you say, what the heck? I'm being attracted to this pile of meat and bones, and it's actually really dirty in there. And every single day it has to be washed. They put perfumes on it so that it smells nice temporarily, but eventually that fades off. You start to dissect it, and all of a sudden you realize I'm not attached to it anymore. The day that Buddha left their palace, when they were returning from their realizations, the 4 truths or sights that they had seen, they came back to their palace and it was nighttime. So the court dancers, they were sleeping. And he looked at them and he says, these girls that were once, you know, that I used to have around me, there's pus coming out of, like, you know, the eye area. They're drooling, there's saliva. I can see their boogers. They don't smell very good. And he sees this and says, this is what I was, you know, like around this entire time. And so that was the night that he decided that he's leaving and that he's going to go find something that's actually true in the world and not just temporary. But Mo can do lots of damage. Jad Bharat, this is the person who India is named after, Bharat, Jad Bharat. He used to do dhyan at the bank of a river, and what happened was there was a deer who was pregnant, that was being hunted by a hunter. And so as the deer was being hunted, it jumped into the river and it drowned, but it ended up giving birth to a fawn before it died. And so Jad Bharat, he decided to raise the fawn, and he became so emotionally attached to it that his dhyan, it wasn't potent anymore, and he was constantly thinking about that fawn because it's young and it's vulnerable. Is it doing okay? Does it need me? Even to the point that when he was dying, he was thinking about the fawn. So he ended up taking birth as a deer his next life, and then he became looked after that. So again, mole can be damaging. And number two, what we can learn from the Sakhi is that the desire at the moment of death manifests quicker than other desires you might have piled in the rest of your life. Your strongest desire at death will manifest first, second, third. It'll be the first, almost the first manifestation you'll have, which is why Bhagat Trilochan Ji in Guru Granth Sahib Ji says that if at the moment of death you think about God, and that contemplation is very strong, you're contemplating Atma as being Paramatma, then there's a possibility that at the moment of death, you will become mukt, that you will find emancipation. And so the two things that we can do before death, and hopefully either we've gotten there before death or we'll do this at death, when you fall asleep every single day, as you're falling asleep, do Atam Chintan. I am not the body, mind, senses, or intellect. I am free. I am Satya. I can never die. I am consciousness. I am Brahm. Me, Atma, Brahm is Brahm's form. This type of Atam Chintan you do while you fall asleep, and this is the Atam Chintan you should do right as you wake up. These two, before falling asleep, as you fall asleep, and when you wake up, your mind is the least restless. It has the least amount of viksheep and opacity to it. So there's a higher chance that Atam Gyan can happen, and it will speed up your process of emergence. Then Guru Sahib says, Kam Krodh Ahankar Nivara Gur Ka Sabda So Samajh Pari. That with the Guru's teachings, the Guru's understanding, Gur Ka Sabda So Samajh Pari, I overcame my desire, anger, and ego. Desire, the Guru told me that desiring from the outside was futile. It never ends up leading to something that's actually satisfactory, actually fulfilling. The Guru teaches us that, for example, Swamiji was teaching us today that the joy that you feel from a desire is not actually from the object of your desire. For example, I desired this pencil. Where that sukh is coming from is this. While you were desiring something, let's say you're very hungry. You're very hungry, desiring some food. Your mind is very restless right now. Once you get the food, this is a plum, upon seeing it, feeling it, and then eating it, what happens is your mind, that very strong desire that was being restless, it stills. For a moment, the mind goes extremely still as you're eating. What happens in a still mind is the Atma's Anand, because Vaheguru is Sachidanand, it gets reflected very clearly in a still mind. And what feels like I'm getting joy from this object is not joy from the object. It's actually joy that's being reflected in a still mind. But the problem with the desire is, as soon as the mind gets still for a moment, it got its banana or its plum, and it felt good, it starts to switch on to a new desire. Oh, I got this plum, felt so great. Now I need something else. A new desire pops up. So it's constant desire still, desire still, desire still. Desiring is futile. It will never lead to a permanent type of joy, but your swarup actually is the ocean of joy. You need to attempt to get there. And then the Guru tells us anger is futile. Why do we become angry? Because we made a desire, it didn't happen, there were obstacles in the way, so we started getting angry. And what does anger do? It destroys your body, it destroys your health, it destroys your immunity, it destroys your relationships, it makes you mentally foggy. It makes you guilty. All of this stuff comes from anger. Not worth it to have. And number 3, ego. Stop thinking that you can control every single thing in your life. Stop thinking that you can control people. Stop thinking that you can control your life trajectory. Stop thinking of all of this. And remember that there is a hukam, a divine law, divine trajectories that are playing out. And they're going to play out the way that they want to play out, regardless of whether you're happy about it or whether you're sad about it. But if you're sad about it, that's going to make you even more sad. The more resistance you have to these divine trajectories, the more painful your experience is going to be here. But the more non-resistant you are to these trajectories, the more peaceful your experience on the planet is going to be, right? So the Guru gives us, and the Guru says to us, have vision like that of a small child. Like a small child is innocent, playful, non-serious, non-lustful, but loving at the same time. Have the vision when you look at somebody, really embody a small, young, innocent child and use that vision to look at them. And you will see that your life will become more joyous, playful, non-serious, innocent. When it came to anger, Swamiji here told us a sakhi of 2 brothers that lived in Ludhiana who bought farm property and a farmhouse in Delhi. And they started to fight over who gets which side and how much is given to each brother. And they both ended up killing each other with guns, and everything was finished. So anger, futile. It doesn't lead to anything. And then, Kintha Choli Parpura Rahya Nanak Tara Ek Hari. Kintha or Godri is like it's like a blanket that the yogis keep with them. And Guru Maharaj is saying, listen, a blanket surrounds you, right? It covers you up. Well, you see this all-pervasive cosmic Vaheguru, this consciousness that is interwoven inside of a blade of grass to the highest mountain. It surrounds me. It's enveloping me all the time. And it is my Kintha. Kintha Parpura Rahya. Then Choli Nanak Tara Ek Hari. Choli means a begging bag, you can call it. That my begging bag is always oriented towards God, and I beg them for themselves. I beg God for his name. I beg God for his own presence, because I know that there's only one thing that can save me, that can quench me, that can destroy my thirst and my hunger, and that is God themselves. I beg for him, he saves me. Tare ek hari. To give your mind, okay. Here Swamiji talked about Kirtan. To give your mind natural attraction to Vaheguru. You might have noticed in the world, there's natural attractions, right? You're naturally attracted to people. You're naturally attracted to status. You're naturally attracted to, I don't know, different things in the world. But it happens very naturally for you. But why is it that when it comes to God, it's not a natural attraction? I have to try hard, or because somebody told me that this is the pathway that you should take, I'm doing it. Why isn't it happening naturally? Not for all of you. For a lot of you, it might actually happen naturally. But one way for you to have a natural attachment to Vaheguru is to listen to Kirtan. Scientists even say this, talking and singing, listening to a lecture versus listening to music, they activate different regions of your brain, completely different regions of your brain. And that's actually because music, listening to music or listening to Kirtan, it has a deeper impact on your psyche. Good or bad, because music is neutral, it's what you're listening to. Let's say you listen to something that is, sorry, not the music is not neutral, your brain is neutral. And so let's say you're listening to, I don't know, really like depressing music or very sad music. You'll notice when you listen to it, it has a very deep impact on your psyche. Or if you listen to very happy music, it has a very deep impact, versus if someone just talked to you. Listening to the music might have a deeper impact. Same way, if you listen to music that is imbibed with God's praises, we call it kirtan. If you listen to it, it will have a deeper impact on your psyche. It will start to write impressions down on your psyche that are God-oriented, so that when you stop listening to it and you're just walking around, there's a natural attraction that's going to be produced because impressions have been written deeply. So listening to kirtan is a very great, very powerful sadhana to make you naturally attractive and naturally successful on the spiritual process, a pathway. Then, Sacha Sahib Sachi Nai Parkha Gur Ki Baat Khari. And then finally, Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, I've made my Guru's teachings the priority in my life. And my Guru is the one that has told me, Sacha Sahib, that the Sahib Vaheguru is true, is truth. And his names and his praises and his surups, all of them are true. Sacha Sahib Sachi Nai, Parkha Gur Ki Baat Khari. And when I tested this, my Guru's words ended up being genuine. Khari means genuine, Parkha means to test. When I tested my Guru's word, meaning when I applied my Guru's words, they ended up being genuine. He was right, that in this entire world, Sacha Sahib Sachi Nai. Here Swamiji talked about sometimes parents get mad. I know maybe Anupam Prakash people have experience of this, or maybe other people in the class where people, parents will say, why don't you ever listen to me? You always listen to Swamiji, right? Or we gave you so much, we taught you so much. But one thing to remember is this, the difference between a parent and a guru. Yes, parents teach us things, but they also taught us a lot of things that have now become obstacles on our spiritual journey. A lot of impressions were given to us as children, and by no fault of the parent alone. This is the best that they knew because of their own teachings and learnings. They gave us a lot of impressions that are now being difficult to cross. Now that we're trying to leave our identities behind and actually go into Brahm Sarup, there are things that were given to us, teachings of mine and what is yours and what is not yours, that were great for living in the world, but they weren't great for spirituality. But a guru, a sant, only gives teachings that are good for our spiritual journey. They're not giving us impressions that are going to be detrimental on this spiritual pathway. A guru, a saint, gives teachings to free you, not to bind you more. They are really, truly your friend. And then Swamiji continued on with Sidh Gosht. The yogi said a few other things to Guru Nanak Dev Ji about what to wear and so forth. Undhao khappar panchapu topi. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is telling Guru Nanak Dev Ji, they told me that I should have a begging bowl, a khappar. Undhao khappar panchapu topi, and that I should wear a 5-stringed hat. And I replied saying, I'm actually already wearing these things. Look, when my mind bowl was down and facing the world, I wasn't able to collect anything. But when I turned my mind towards God, I ended up filling myself up so much. So my mind is the begging bowl, my mind is the kappar. As it turned towards God, it became the begging bowl and it became full. And panchpu topi, my hat, the 5-stringed hat that I'm wearing, is the 5 teachings that I get from the 5 elements. From Akasha, I learn asangata, or to be unaffected, to remain aloof, right? How do we practice this? That if my own body is not going to go with me, then how are the rest of these people, relatives, or objects that are connected to my body going to go with me? But to still love them, because understanding that my Atma is within everybody. To love them from the Atma standpoint, but then to be unaffected from the body and mind's standpoint. And then how else do we practice asangata? I am not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the senses, I'm not the intellect, I'm not any of the barriers or the words or the sentences that I use to describe myself. I am merely the knower, the consciousness, the Jananhar Vaheguru. This type of chintan is the highest level of bhakti possible. All shastras, I've read a few granths, and they all say this unequivocally. Whether it's a yoga shastra, whether it's a Brahmvidya shastra, they always say that Atam Chintan is the highest form of bhakti, is the highest sadhana that you can do. From wind, we learn how to be detached, to not have moh. Wind goes on circumambulating everything, but it never actually gets affected or gets attached, right? So to practice detachment or to be without moh is vayu. Agni or fire taught me, or Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying, to have gyan. Think about what Agni does, fire. It provides light and clarity. Mental clarity comes from gyan. Gyan that the Guru gives you. That is what Agni taught me. Jal, or water, teaches me to be peaceful and to keep it calm and cool, healing, friendly, pleasant demeanor. Someone's yelling at me, no problem. I don't start yelling back. Something goes wrong, no problem. Let's figure out a way to solve it. Always be part of the solution. Don't be a part of the problem, right? Swamiji here made a note about people that even will go after saints that are just preaching for you to have good qualities and understand yourself. Saints do not preach for you to become something, only that you remove the identities you're already wearing that are blocking you from knowing who you actually are. A saint, a real saint, will not tell you to become a Hindu or to become a Sikh or to become a Christian, because they're telling you that you're not even the body. So forget about all of the other things that you're gonna put on top of the body. A saint themselves know that they are Satchit Anand Sarup. That is the qualification for a saint. They themselves know that they are Brahm, and they are spreading the teachings of that Brahm, spreading the teachings of that eternal, pervasive Satchidanand consciousness. And from earth, we learn forgiveness. Earth is very resilient. No matter what happens, no matter how much we dig in there, make holes that are like kilometers long, or whatever we do, the earth still rotates, still does what it needs to do to provide us nourishment. So it's very resilient and very forgiving. A sutra that Swamiji gave us in the class was, if you have hurt someone, then ask for forgiveness. And if you have been hurt by someone, then give forgiveness. If you've hurt somebody, ask for forgiveness. And if you've been hurt by someone, give them forgiveness. And what this will, it'll make you weightless. It'll make you breathe easier. It'll have no knots, no grudges held up in there for so many years. Just let go and be free. Kaya Karasana Man Jagoti. The body necklace that I'm wearing is the discipline that I put my body through. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying, instead of wearing an actual physical necklace around the body, I have put my body through tap. I make it wake up in the morning. I have meditative discipline. I make sure that my body eats right, that it sleeps right, that it exercises right. All of these things, this is the body necklace that I'm wearing. And Man Jagoti. So Jagoti is like a covering of the genitals, like a kashera or like a langoti. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying, keeping my mind's vrittis under control, this is my Jagoti. My body's control is my body necklace, and keeping my mind under control and making sure that it's vrittis. So we learned about this, we called it sum. Keeping my vrittis under control, this is my Jagoti. Sat Santok Sanjam hai naal. So the yogis had said to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, why don't you keep a few followers with you? Keep a few disciples with you. Then you'll really look like a powerful yogi. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji responds saying that I do keep people with me. I do keep followers with me. And they are Sat, Santok, and Sanjam. Satya, contemplation of the truth always stays with me. Santok, contentment, that I want nothing more. I'm so fulfilled and happy with what I have. I also keep this with me. And Sanjam, Sanjam means that you save all of as much time and energy as you can save, and you put it towards your sadhana and atam chintan. This is sanjam. I always keep sanjam. So these are the 3 disciples that I keep with me. And here Swamiji also talked about swadharam. Krishna and I think it was Gita that they're referring to. They talk about how a person should live their life according to their swadharam, and they should not live their life according to paradharam. It's even worse than dying. It means to live according to your own innate nature. There are certain things that you are born with, that you have honed, and if you have these possibilities, them in trying to copy somebody else. If you have lotus trying to become, don't try to be someone else, own your own abilities. Paradharam is to refuse your innate nature and your innate possibilities and try to copy somebody else. You didn't get to grow yourself. You also didn't get to become the person you were trying to copy, and you've destroyed your entire life, right? And then finally, Nanak Gurumukh Naam Saman. Guru Nanak Dev Ji answers finally that I have surrendered to the Guru. I'm a Gurumukh who has told me about Atma and how Atma is Paramatma, and has given me an indicator to always be in this remembrance, and that indicator is Naam. Naam means that the Guru has given me Naam and the Shabad Upadesh about Nami. And now I use that Naam to constantly remember the Nami. And this Dhan I always keep with myself. This is the pathway. This is how I have become a yogi. So this is Guru Nanak Dev Ji's response to the yogis. Swamiji ended off by saying that remember that this spiritual journey is an individual spiritual journey. Even if you're doing something that you know innately is right for you, is giving you results on your spiritual pathway, but the populace is not doing it, you're probably going right. Because never, ever in history has there been a populace that has been enlightened. It's always been individuals, and individuals that have stood out as being different from the populace that have actually become enlightened. So I wish you all the best. Please forgive me for my mistakes. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.